please read the questions that are on the template either before you read this or as you read this or listen to it, because the questions have the page number next to them as to where you're going to find the answer. So you should not have any trouble answering any of the questions on the template for this chapter, or this part of chapter 12. All right, here we go. The Caliphate. The first caliph, Abu Bakr. Muhammad died 20 years after he began preaching his message. Many of his community of believers had only recently converted, and their loyalty was not always strong. It was not clear if Islam would survive. There needed to be a successor to Muhammad, and fast. The important people of Medina, which remained the most central city after Muhammad's death, met in private. When they emerged, they announced that Abu Bakr would be the caliph, or successor, meaning Muhammad's successor. Muhammad had many children, all of whom died during his lifetime, except for Fatima, wife of Ali. He also had a large extended family. After the death of his first wife, Khadijah, he had married again. And here's an illustration of Abu Bakr and the Muslims. And then over here, we have an illustration of the first 4 caliphs of Islam. I'm going to go back to the sentencing it because it continues on the next page. After the death of his first wife, Khadijah, he had married again several times. Abu Bakr was Muhammad's father-in-law by his wife Aisha. We will hear more of Aisha later. He was also one of Muhammad's closest friends and known to be a wise and strong man. Abu Bakr had an immediate and difficult task. Many tried to leave Islam after Muhammad's death, or stop paying taxes to the new Muslim leaders. Abu Bakr fought many battles with people who wished to secede, which means leave. Abu Bakr was successful for 2 reasons. First, he was a great military leader. Second, he was a great preacher himself. The story was that he had convinced 6 of his friends to become Muslims within 1 hour after he himself had converted. Abu Bakr turned his former enemies into committed Muslims. Eager to follow his lead, they became part of a formidable military force. He continued the campaign that Muhammad had begun, and within 2 years of Muhammad's death, the Muslims ruled the entire Arabian Peninsula and had started campaigns to conquer Syria and Iraq. Arabia became truly united. It had always been a mix of Bedouin tribes, towns, and small countries, often ignored or exploited by the Byzantine and Persian empires. Now it was a power in its own right. Here is looks like a photograph of an Islamic sword. The second caliph, Umar. Abu Bakr died just 2 years after becoming the first caliph. On his deathbed, he nominated his successor, Umar, a close colleague of Muhammad's and his father-in-law's as well. Muhammad had married Umar's daughter, Hafsa. Umar was a political genius. He established one of the greatest empires in history, winning battles and expanding that empire at an even faster rate than Muhammad and Abu Bakr had. He also put structures in place to keep the empire strong. The story of Umar's conversion to Islam. Umar had an interesting past. He had been an enemy of Muhammad's before converting to Islam. Umar was a well-traveled and literate man born to a powerful family in Mecca. Literate means you can read and write. He had a reputation for being hard and sometimes cruel. At first, he hated Muhammad's message and was one of the worst persecutors of the early Muslims. The legend is that in 616 CE, 3 years after Muhammad began converting people in Mecca, Umar decided to have him assassinated. Striding toward Muhammad's house, he met a passerby who told him that Umar's own sister, Fatima, had converted to Islam. Furious, Umar changed direction and rushed to Fatima's house. He burst in, and his sister hurriedly hid the papers she had been reading. He shouted at her and demanded to see what she was reading. Angry herself, Fatima told him it was the Angry herself, Fatima told him it was the Quran and that he was too impure to touch it. He grabbed the Quran and began to read. Immediately he started weeping and converted to Islam on the spot. He became one of Muhammad's closest allies. I want you to think about this for a minute if this is true. It says the legend is that in 616 CE. So if it's a legend, think about in your head if you know whether that is true or probably a made-up story. All right. So we're still talking about Umar here. Umar, he appointed regional governors to the palaces he conquered and required them to live in a humble way. Their doors had to remain open to the people. Umar himself believed to have led a very simple life. He lived in a small home and wore inexpensive clothes. If he felt officials were flaunting their wealth, he had them dismissed. He created a special department that would investigate complaints about state officials. If they were found guilty, they could be flogged. Umar also created a taxation system for the new Islamic Empire. All Muslims had to pay a tax of 2% of their earnings to help the poor and needy. Non-Muslims also had to pay a tax. Umar used these taxes, among other things, to help the unemployed and the elderly, just as many governments today use taxes to support people in need. Umar was not only a political genius, but a military one. In his 10 years as caliph, he fought many wars. With his greatest generals, Abu Ubaidah and Khalid, he devastated the great Byzantine and Persian empires. In 636 and 637, 2 decisive battles were fought that led to the Muslims conquering huge portions of Byzantine territory and breaking the Persian Empire completely. By his death in 644, just 12 years after Muhammad's own death, Umar had captured much of the Persian Empire. He had moved through Syria and into Egypt. He had taken the great cities of Damascus and Jerusalem from the Byzantines. Okay, so if you look over here at this map, and I know there's got lots of funny arrows on there, it just shows you the campaigns, the different places where they had military campaigns. But I think what's even more important when you look at this is these are the lands that they gained under Muhammad, the darkest green right here. Then the second darkest green right around here is Abu Bakr. And then Umar is this right here, this lighter green. And then the lightest green says that it is under, Uthman is the last one. Sorry, I know I kind of moved that. But now you can see this just a little bit better because it was really blurry. All right, sorry guys. This is the last part I'm going to read, and your last question is about this. I want you to be thinking about what the main idea of this part right here is. Politics, not religion. The Muslims conquered many lands, but they did not force Jews and Christians to convert. That means they let them keep their own religion and did not force them to convert to being Muslim. They recognized the common roots of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Some Christians and Jews were attracted to Muhammad's message and did choose to convert, but this happened over a long time. Christians and Jews did pay higher taxes than poor Muslims, but less than under the Persians or the Byzantines. In general, they were treated better in the first Islamic empires than they had been under earlier empires, and often preferred living in Islamic lands.